Welcome back to the Starting Block Podcast. This is part 2.
Hey, gentlemen. Chris,
Welcome back.
Hey,
John,
David.
absolutely amazing. Hey. So, kicking kind of things back off where we left off. The focus of the system, right, is to unlock the potential in every aspect of life. Not just in your athletic performance on the field, but optimizing your potential in every aspect. That's the critical function of the nervous system, the training that prepares us to be able to recover from whatever stress and stimulus that we're exposed to. That's why the athletes that are in the system are able to apply it to any sport, right? From volleyball, basketball, badminton, to beyond, to their studies, academic studies, to poetry, to writing, right? To and beyond that in the business world, right? Critical thinking and being able to respond to stress and deadlines. That's the beauty of it. It's unlocking human potential. And it just depends on how you want to display that ability.
As we were talking about, how just the nervous system influences everything from our digestion, bowel movements to this conversation and stuff like that. And then, how, to bridge that gap with how the stress influences as well. Like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to bridge this very well, but it's just on my mind, and the stressor made me think about it. So I actually had a client who, I don't like to use the word patient, but she was coming to me because she had a pain. And so this client, first time, her stress level got so high that she couldn't even function. Like just the simple muscle test didn't cause any pain, wasn't that. It was just this mental stress and agony of something's going to be wrong with me, and it just shut her down. We had to take a break, actually, just from a muscle test. And so my point in all that is saying I feel like one of the things that we see now is people are so stressed in every element and aspect of their life that just the simplest little things completely shut the body down because their capacity to handle it, the bandwidth to handle it is just gone, and when we look at a system that really tries to attack stress, I guess you could say this system does or help you manage it. I just think there's a lot of benefit in that. I don't know. Does that make any sense at all? I may not have bridged that gap.
Absolutely. Look, stress is I like to say, sugar and stress are the root of all evil, right? So, I mean, sugar, feeds cancer cells, right? Sugar creates this, tremendous inflammation within our bodies that is incredibly detrimental and deteriorates. It's poison within us, right?
So that's why you have a tequila business, right?
I don't. I actually cognac and sparkling wine, but that's a whole different conversation. Compartmentalize, right? But the reality is, our ability to manage and recover and respond to stress dictates everything from longevity to productivity, efficiency, and our level of performance in everything that we do.
Mm-hmm. I know when I've seen information, we all know about Seeley's general adaptation model and stress and things like that, but I've always felt like in Jay's case, I felt like that was a much larger part of the puzzle than you see with other systems. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Without question. I mean, we talked about it previously, putting somebody in a iso extreme activity, right, for a long duration will expose everything you need to know about them, how they respond in any situation or circumstance moving forward. And especially when you add the precision aspect of it, in how it needs to be executed, and seeing when that individual and how that individual breaks down, when those compensation patterns take place, their response to that level of stress. And then when you throw in a device to it to magnify it, like an ARP wave, right, to amplify the sensations and the stimulus, seeing how someone responds, whether or not they're overwhelmed, right? Just all of those things are critical as far as providing you with readouts on how to address the individual, how to unlock greater performance in every aspect of their life. But again, it goes back to it doesn't matter what you're capable of achieving or doing in a comfortable setting, right? We have to be able to create high levels of performance in extreme levels of discomfort, extreme levels of stress, and not just once or twice, but being able to do it on a consistent basis over and over and over and over. We need to become, to a certain extent, predictable as far as knowing how we will respond in each and every situation, right? For example, a golfer, right? It doesn't matter how far you can strike the ball, right? What matters is you being able to predict the outcome of the swing, right? And replicate that feeling and sensation over and over and know exactly what the outcome is going to be. And then being able to adjust accordingly to create the desired effect, to display what you're looking to display, create the outcome that you're looking to create, right? So that's critical in everything we do. It shouldn't be a guessing game. We should have predictable outcomes associated with our levels of intent and efforts.
So then how do we address that in a training scenario? I mean, yeah, you could put somebody in ISO extreme and see what happens, but then I guess how do we establish some of these parameters of what we're looking for? Are there actual tangible elements you're looking for, or are you looking for, intangible, subconscious types of manifestations?
I mean, we're looking at all the above, right? But initially, before an individual can create optimal force and reduce risk of injury, right, they first need to be able to stabilize and withstand force and function under extreme levels of stress and maintain high levels of discipline and precision to their execution over a period of time, so that then it becomes predictable as far as how they respond in those situations and circumstances before they are then exposed to the next phase, right? So, for example, before someone is able to be exposed to high load, high volume, right, high velocity plyometrics, for example, right, they first need to be mastering certain positions under certain circumstances, under certain stresses and situations, so that we know that they will be able to recover and withstand the demands and stresses of what the next phase is about to expose them to, right? Very few programs out there prepare their athletes to be able to perform high volumes of extreme plyometrics and ballistic type activities, right? And if they do, in most cases, almost all of those programs fail because the athletes are not prepared to withstand that level of force over and intensity over and over and over again. But if you get on a playing field, right, that's what you're exposed to, right? It's not 5 reps of broad jump. It's not 5 reps of squat jumps or split squats. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reps during the course of a game, right? Or so unless you're prepared to be able to recover from that and also prepared to be able to execute those movements or activities at a very, very, very high level, you're going to be exposed. You're either going to be exposed to potential risk of injury, or you're going to be exposed to not performing at a high level that will allow you to achieve great success. And that applies to everything, right? It's preparation to deal with the potential stress that you will encounter, whether it's on a playing field, whether it's in business, whether it's in a relationship. It doesn't matter. It's preparing yourself to be able to recover from that next level of stress that you are going to potentially be exposed to.
I don't remember where I read it, or maybe it was just a conversation Dr. J and I were having at some point. But I recall that, and actually you made the statement and made me think about it, that an athlete couldn't progress to the next level until all the systems of the body were in line. Whether that I don't know if that was just specifically like physical and like digestive, but like I do remember digestive was something that came up in that conversation or in that reading that I found. I guess how can you even monitor that, and how do you not know? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how do outside influences, how do we know it's not impacting it, that the stress of the actual exercise is okay for the individual, but it's the outside stuff that's causing causing the issues, but then being able to know whether or not they can progress to the next level of drops or rebounds or whatnot. I mean, I feel like there's just so many variables there that are very difficult to quantify and say tangibly, like, hey, yes, it's yes or no. And is there truly a yes and no to that question?
I think there's a lot of gray there, as there is in everything else. Everything needs to be taken into consideration. All those variables need to always be taken into consideration. But our ability to be able to successfully perform certain activities, movements, exercises that we're exposing the individuals to within the program, then better prepares them to be able to withstand that stress and demands outside of the training sector, and allow them to recover and manage that more efficiently and proficiently, to be able to recover faster, sleep better, deeper sleep, REM sleep. I mean, all of those things. And, we're in a time period right now, unlike any other, where we have access to great technology, right? As far as assessments go, right? Unfortunately, the technology also is utilized quite a bit in performance and the training aspect as well, and trying to enhance the performance. And that's often now a crutch where people are so dependent on the technologies of the exercise or the activity or the training program versus the actual critical thinking and the protocols and methodologies that are essential to optimize performance. So I think all of those things need to be taken. And look, the system, right, is designed to create heightened levels of awareness. Mm-hmm. And the greater awareness, right, you have, the greater sensitivity you have to patterns and signals that your body sends. So by creating by within the system, right, by enhancing that awareness, by enhancing that function, and with that awareness, it's having the precision in the execution, so then you're able to then identify where there's discrepancies, where there's vulnerabilities, where there's compensations. When you're that aware during your training and you're preparing yourself to always be aware, you can then apply it in any aspect of your life, whether it's how you're sleeping, having greater awareness of how you're sleeping, your response to sleep, your response to stress, your response to certain foods, your ability to digest them, respond from them, utilize them effectively so that they're fueling your body in a positive way. I mean, it's that heightened level of awareness can be applied to any aspect of your life to then potentially unlock greater levels of performance, because you're able to identify such details, such factors, right, that then you can make adjustments to, right? It's one thing if you're oblivious, right? That, I mean, it's ignorance is bliss, right? Right,
Yeah.
to a certain extent, right? But once you become aware, then it's up to you to do something about it, right? Whether
Hmm.
it's when I sleep in this type of environment after this type of day, this is how I feel. This is my response. If after I eat certain types of foods, after during certain periods of time, right, that consist of certain, you know, nutrients. This is my. It's being having that heightened level of awareness to then be able to make those adjustments necessary
Hmm. Hmm.
in every aspect.
I'm processing what my next question, what and where I wanted to go with this. You know, how how is it that I guess when you're in the system and we see these variables that are consistently playing a role, and like, I mean, how are we helping these individuals take that under control? So maybe it is a gut issue. I remember hearing a story, and you can tell me if it's true or not, like that Jay would actually hook the ARP up to somebody's stomach while they were eating.
Listen, there's
You know, but and now
we
that we're talking about stress, I assume that was probably wise to help regulate and get the stress levels down.
you know again the ARP is a device that we've hooked up to any and
Uh
every
huh.
part
Yep.
of
I
our
know.
bodies and
You and me
experimented
both,
with.
brother. Yep.
But it's using science and critical thinking, rational thinking, and application, and look, it's continued experimentation, right, to unlock next levels of performance and function. And look, the when whether you go and see a physician in a hospital, right, or come in and work with one of us, right, to a certain extent, there's a part of the process is always going to be experimenting to see how someone may respond in particular situations and circumstances,
Hmm.
in order to then refine the approach moving forward to optimize their performance or ability to recover or whatever it may be.
So I have a thought that that it's very personal, but since we're kind of as we get close to wrapping up the kind of the pipes side of stuff and moving a little bit more into the physical side of stuff, let's touch on that, the why, the vision. We've heard and we've talked about where Jay will say, oh, you shouldn't feel things. I remember I had to answer this in a Q&A episode that we did, and I think you and I connected on that. But let's I want to use my personal experience here. So, because you said something that made it click with me, like when you have a vision, right? And you have that why, you are engaged in that physically, emotionally, intellectually, psychologically, spiritually. It's there. But then it gets taken and it's not achievable anymore. I'm not going to go into details of what that is, but I'll just say that that happened to me, and I can't seem to reverse that. My brain is stuck, and my training has suffered. I can feel it, and I didn't really make that connection until you said that just a minute ago. Why does something like this happen? Like, why can we? How come like my brain literally can't rebuild and recreate a vision? It's just stuck in this one thing. You got an answer for me there?
I think maybe the why needs to be greater, right? So to
Okay.
me, the why isn't necessarily based on performance on a playing field or that very moment. It has to be kind of the end picture, right? The why to a certain extent is who we are, who we want to be to ourselves and the people we love, right? Being able to, to me, right, as a man, my greatest why is being able to put myself in the best possible situation and position to be able to take care of my family, to be able to never become a burden on my family, to be able to perform at the highest level, to lead by example, to be able to maintain higher levels of awareness and discipline and focus and function for them as I age, as I get older, so that I don't become a worry or a burden to them, right? It's so that I'm able to maintain a higher level of function and performance the rest of my life, so that I'm not exposed to levels of pain and crippling type impact that the aging process has on a lot of individuals out there. That why a lot of times has to be greater than just squatting a particular amount or running a particular 40-yard dash time, or benching something, or looking a particular way, or even just functioning in a particular way. It sometimes has to be, that why has to be greater for your stepson, for your stepdaughter, for your wife, for your mother and father, for yourself down the road, so that you're not a burden to your children, so that you're an asset to the community, you're an asset to the people around you, so that you put yourself in a position to be able to function at the highest level that you wish to and are willing to sacrifice for in any situation or environment that you're ever exposed to, right? That's the why every day. It's not how you look in a bathing suit. It's not how far you can hit a ball or how hard you can throw a ball. It's what type of contribution can you make to your loved ones, to your closest circle, to your village, to society, right? That what type of impact can you have?
So I missed the mark. Basically, Jay already told me I was wrong on a bunch of stuff, which is fine. I'll take criticism. I just want to I want to get better, but that makes sense.
You have to look. You have to look. And again, this is how I view it, right? You have to look beyond. It's the end. What does the end look like for you? What do you want the end to feel like for you? I do not ever, 30 years from now, I do not want to feel less than what I feel now. I actually want to feel more. I want to feel better than I do right now, right? And that's my why. I do not want to regress. I do not want to deteriorate. I do not want to have my loved ones ever see me deteriorate, right? Right? And I also want to lead by example for all of them, so that they see what is potentially achievable, that there is more. And obviously we're humans, right? We're imperfect. We're highly flawed, right? But it's about continuously closing the gap on our genetic potential. We will never reach it, but it's closing that gap and doing things every day that allow you to be better today than you were yesterday.
Well, shit, I got some work to do. Okay.
and understanding that everything has a side effect. Every single decision you make has a side effect, good and bad. It has a ripple effect, right? And how does that impact you, not just this very moment, not just tomorrow or a week down the road, a month down the road, but how does it impact the end, right? And when you look back at things, and your time potentially is, closing in, what does your life look like? What regrets do you have? And the greater awareness you have, it's a blessing and a curse, because the greater awareness you have, the greater opportunity you have to do something about it. And that's a tremendous responsibility, that you have to yourself and the people around them. And so every choice you make is critical. And look, again, we're highly imperfect. We're humans are hypocritical. It's just to what level?
Yeah.
and we procrastinate, just at what level, right? And how do we respond in situations that create discomfort? And how do we respond in situations that create stress, whether it's external or internally created? But the reality is, we have far greater control than we can even begin to fathom. And every choice that we make throughout the course of our day, from as little as how do we respond during the course of a conversation, how do we respond to a thought that crosses our mind, impacts us not just this very moment, but has a long-term ripple effect.
Like I said, man, that's some David Goggins stuff right there. You're getting deep. I think we lost Chris. I don't think Chris is able to rejoin, but we'll keep going and dig
Absolutely.
into a couple other things. But let's get into a little bit more of the training side of it, a little bit more of the physical component. I guess as we bridge this gap here between being prepared mentally, emotionally, and physically, was there anything in particular that you would look for? And I'm not asking you to speak for Jay, just in your experiences. Were there certain parameters that you set before you really start to take somebody deep into the system?
Touch on what you just said, speak for Jay. I mean, that's impossible to do, right? I mean,
Yeah.
his thinking, I view it all as chess, right? You're setting up moves, right, to gain position, and you're working 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. Grandmasters are working at 4, 5, 6 moves beyond ahead, and have this level of creativity and thought and imagination that goes behind it that is, very, to a certain extent, even unimaginable to most and unfathomable. And, Jay is beyond that grandmaster and has, I mean, he lives it, he breathes it, he eats it, he sleeps it. It's his life, and it has been his life. And the remarkable circumstances that were the genesis of all of this, right? Just show you how remarkable human beings can be when pushed up against a wall, and your life is on the line, and the future of your life and the quality of the rest of your life is on the line. And that's how the system was created, right? That's why Jay created it, because to a certain extent, his future was on the line. And if it wasn't for this system, he most likely would have been bedridden the rest of his life, right? Mm-hmm. So when you think about it in that regard, it just shows how special the genesis and the origin of the system is. And obviously since then, right, anyone who's been exposed to Jay, been around Jay, has read the literature and listened to the podcasts and even the literature that he's referenced has their own take and perception on it and their own version of it. But the system is so remarkable that even a variation of it, right, that may not encompass all the details that maybe Jay had initially intended, still has tremendous impact and impact that far exceeds what anyone else has even been able to remotely touch on themselves with any other system out there that I've been exposed to or have read about or have seen. So,
What about, I know there's a lot of people out there that say there is no system. And I mean, I'm not one of those people, but I understand where people are coming from when they say that. But you and I see it a lot differently. What do you say to there is no system? It's people just say it's just convoluted. There is no progression. It's just this, and this.
I think those people tend to not necessarily understand the patience necessary, the sacrifice necessary, this discipline and persistence necessary, the pipes
The essence
necessary,
of the system. This
that
is the system.
but to a certain extent, people are so quick to jump from, one cycle of activity to another, to another, to another, saying, all right, I've already accomplished the maximal adaptation from it and I've plateaued and now I'm moving on to the next and moving on to the next. And the reality is, in almost all cases, they really haven't truly absorbed and received and achieved everything that they were potentially supposed to receive from it and achieve from it, and the full adaptation and evolution of it, because they truly haven't spent enough time in it, but they even more so weren't properly prepared prior to it to receive what they were supposed to receive from it. So, again, we'll reference the iso extremes and extreme eccentrics. People do not spend enough time working and obsessing and mastering that particular phase. And they're so quick to move on. And just because they've achieved some level of success in their athletic careers or in how they've applied that training, right, or the exposure to that, right, or not even having performed any of that prior to, and just having achieved a high level of athletic success, and then they come into the system and say they're beyond this, or okay, we've done that for enough. Now can we move on, or think it's time to move on? In reality, they haven't even scratched the surface as to what they were actually supposed to receive from it prior to moving on, because that alone on its own allows them to optimize and get more out of what they're already capable of achieving, or whichever level they're able to execute at. I think it's rushed, right? Because it's boring, it's uncomfortable, it's monotonous, it's too consistent. It forces you to have to figure out more and more and more, and be even more in tune, and be even more aware, and even unlock more. It's something, it taps into human beings, especially in today's day and age, right? Need for continuous
Stimulation.
Distraction, right? Stimulation, but the moment that stimulation becomes too overwhelming due to the duration of it, the intensity of it, the speed of it, they're ready to jump into the next stimulation to, turn the page, change the channel, swipe to the next image before they've even been able to receive, read the caption. And, they're judging the book by the cover, the image for what it is, and not what if there's more to it, right? Beyond what they're seeing. And that's kind of the perfect way to also describe part of the system, right? At least the initial phase. Well, no, I mean, to a certain extent, all of it, right? People see rebounds and they see, okay, you're just dropping and catching weights. No big deal, right? Oh, you're just holding a position. No big deal. That looks easy. Oh, you're just lowering yourself through a particular range of motion. No big deal, right? It's people don't understand the depth of it. They don't even give themselves an opportunity to understand. And what they don't realize is the more time you spend doing it, the greater understanding it unlocks. And I think, both you and Chris I can almost 100% say that over the time that you have been exposed to these exercises, activities, the system, right, whatever you want to call it, there's been more and more self-discovery, right? Not just about the exercise or the activity itself, but about yourself and how you respond and what you're supposed to get out of it. There's levels to it. And you may have done it for a year and think you're ready to move on, but in year 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you're like, holy shit, I didn't even realize this, right? I didn't realize this about myself. I didn't realize this about the activity. I didn't realize about the application of it and all of those things, how it can be implemented and its impact and impact on, I thought it was just impacting X, Y, and Z, but it's impacting so much more. So it's the shallow thinking behind it as well, right? Which, most view it as, okay, it's for very superficial, right? And not the depth that it deserves and the impact that it then has on any and everything beyond, right?
And I think, the depth of going beyond it and how it's bringing more out of you than you realize. I think that kind of leads into the next question of, always training at high intensities, because that's something the body needs, which also leads into the myth of in-season versus off-season work and taking it easy. Speak on that.
We, as human beings, we, in general, try to find the most efficient and easiest and most comfortable way to, approach things and to live everyday life, right? But what that does is it prevents us from seeing what's on the other side, who we're truly supposed to be, what is truly inside of us. And whether you're in season or off season, to me, I mean, it's all the same to me, because the objective every day is to become better than the previous day. Whether you're playing in the course of a 18 game, 82 game season, 160 plus game season, or it's, quote unquote, the off season, the objective is to get better every single day. In the process of working to getting better every single day, you're able to recover more efficiently and effectively and proficiently, because you're forcing your body to adapt and evolve and become better, have access to more motor units and muscle fibers, have improvement in access to greater mobility and range of motion and strength through that range of motion and function through that range of motion. It's a continuous process, right? Your ability to manage stress more efficiently and effectively, which thus aids in your ability to perform and recover from whatever stress you're exposed to later on during the course of the day, which may be a game later on in the day or a practice with your team. But again, if the objective every day is to be better than the last, then how is that achievable when the level of intensity and effort and concentration is then diluted or reduced, right? Mm-hmm. You're not able to continue to then evolve and adapt in a positive manner, right? And to a certain extent, it has a psychological impact as well, because if you know you're able to execute, let's say, a 5-minute ISO extreme lunge in a particular, position and mindset and all of these, pipes that are involved in it, right? And then you're going to limit it to a shorter duration with less intensity, less focus. It creates this psychological impact on yourself that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're leaving more on the table. You're not fulfilling your promise, your potential. You're not pushing yourself to unlock more and more and more. Because the reality is, there is no 100%, right? So whether you're able to achieve that 5-minute ISO extreme lunge, right, or not, right? Even if you do, what happened at 67 seconds? What happened at 92 seconds? What happened at 137 seconds? Where was your concentration? Where was your focus? What were you feeling? What weren't you feeling? Were you feeling anything? What type of compensation patterns were taking place? What type of, all of these things that go into it, right? There's always more and more and more. So you've never truly gotten everything that you're potentially capable of getting out of it, because you're always going to miss something. We're humans. We're imperfect. We're never going to truly see what we are truly capable of, because there's so many variables, right? There's so many restrictions. There's so many more components out there. Just because somebody is throwing 100 miles per hour, throwing a pitch at 100 miles per hour, doesn't mean that there isn't more left, right? Doesn't mean that they can't throw it on a more consistent basis. Doesn't mean that they can't recover from it faster. Doesn't mean that they can't throw it at even a higher velocity more consistently. There's always more. There shouldn't be a point where you just get somewhere and say, okay, I've arrived. There's always more. There's always more to unlock. And human beings, more than anything else, we're the best at sabotaging ourselves.
Yep,
we're the best at sabotaging ourselves with the thoughts that go through our mind. We're with knowing we're supposed to do X and we do Y or Z instead because it's a little bit more comfortable, right? We find these little things along the way as we navigate to create a situation where we are less likely to fulfill our true potential. And again, the more aware you are of that, the more you have an opportunity to do something about it. And that responsibility is left to you and how you pursue that and what you do about it. But I just, from the training aspect to the training aiding in the ability to recover from the stress that you're exposed to. But then, the icing on the cake is also taking time to be able to efficiently and more effectively recover between training sessions, right? And those that have access to a ARP, there are protocols with that to accelerate recovery and allow you to achieve more and recover faster and train harder, more frequently, all of those things. But beyond that, there's other things that can be incorporated that can unlock your potential to be able to recover faster in addition to the training system.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that intrigues me so much about training this way is that I feel like it addresses what our society currently is trying to intentionally destroy. And that is the ability that humans are capable of doing a lot more than, what we think we are. I mean, when they say we only use 10% of our brain, okay, well, most people just say, oh, okay. But there are a handful of us out there that say, well, what the hell's the other 90% for? Like, do we even know? Or maybe we do know, or maybe they do know, we're just not being told. And I feel like one of the things with this type of training is it challenges the societal norms of, like you said, finding the easy road, and discovering more about what you can and can't do. And that kind of leads into the next question as well. And we're doing this live. We do this all authentically, guys. So, if you hear some pauses and breaks, that's intentional. I don't go back and edit it. Hell, I don't have time to go back and edit this stuff. But I don't remember if you said it is okay for us to talk about this, but you train a particular athlete. He's a boxer. Can we speak on him a little bit?
You talking about the son of the boxer?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But kind of reverting back a little bit, just rewinding a little bit to what you just said about society and only using 10% of your brain, and the reality is to unlock next levels of performance and function and thinking and memory and cognitive function, right? Let's just say cognitive function in general, which then leads to enhanced potential for, physical, right? Again, reverting back to the pipes, mm-hmm. right? It's the level of concentration, focus, consistency, discipline, mm-hmm. sacrifice that a human being has to undergo, right, in order to unlock more and more and more and more, is going to grow increasingly uncomfortable as they progress to looking to unlock that next phase, right? And mm-hmm. what's next, what's beyond what they're capable of, or what society thinks we're capable of, or the current standards that have been set. But you have to be willing to overcome extreme levels of discomfort and extreme levels of pain, right? In order to see what's on the other side. And most people will never be willing to make that level of sacrifice. They may say they are.
Right.
Right. But saying and doing is a whole different.
And that's I think where I'm going. And I think we'll save that. We'll save it for part 3. But where I was headed with that is that's what intrigues me so much, because this particular athlete's father was one of the greatest of all time. And now the son is coming up as well. And so now you have this paradigm of father who lived in the time where this was expected. And this man had an iron will. And now how the son who's exposed to this training system, if he's anything like what his father was like, now we've combined these two theories and we're creating like a superhuman, bro. But it's intriguing to me, because I can imagine that his father was probably like, I like this theory, because in today's society, you're not going to find coaches and strength trainers who are talking the way that you're talking right now.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I was actually reached out, his father's coaches had reached out to me. I mean, many years back, obviously, while his father was still in the game, as far as working with his dad and being in camp and not just working with him, but working with the other fighters that were in that camp as well. And through the success that I had with other fighters along the way. And so now to have an opportunity to work with his son is, just, I think is pretty cool. But
Yeah.
that what you often find is a highly successful parent, right, who then has a child. In many cases, that child doesn't ever have to overcome the same level of obstacles
Of
and
hardships,
challenges and
right?
hardships, the adversity, the
Which is why I
struggles,
find that
right?
so intriguing. Yeah. Hmm.
And then there's those rare cases where that child is willing to go above and beyond and get uncomfortable and make those sacrifices and work as if they didn't grow up in an environment or situation where they had greater access and greater comforts, right? Of access to greater comforts that made them complacent, right? And instead, this young man has exhibited work ethic that I've rarely seen, right? And it's been part of his evolution and his willingness to expose himself. And that's one of the things also, right? When we talk about the initial phase of the system that people like to rush through or think they're too good for, right? That phase exposes the individual and creates the greatest evolution, right? Or kicks off that the potential for a greater rate of speed for that evolution for that individual. But it's a complete reprogramming. But from day one, this young man was willing to force himself to be vulnerable and be exposed, have all his weaknesses, insecurities exposed. His ego, his pride was, never something that has come into play and has been a limiting factor that we've had to overcome, which is rare, right? It's in order for you to receive higher levels of information, right? You have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You have to put your guard down. You have to set aside those protective mechanisms, right, to be able to receive that data, that feedback, that information to allow for potential for greater evolution. And this young man's uncle would come and observe him training initially when we started, and he would never make it through a single session because he couldn't stand to watch the level of vulnerability, discomfort, and exposure that his nephew was subjected to and was having to deal with and manage and overcome during the process, which is what has allowed us to then advance to levels that we are today. And still to this day, right, we're still working on getting more and more. That foundation, right, is still incorporated and then utilized to apply during in season and utilized to enhance recovery, optimize what we may have coming up next and next and next. Because, like we talked about, a lot of times folks will view, okay, you're dropping and catching weights, right? No big deal. but they don't understand in what's actually going on there. Or people will view a jumping exercise, a plyometric type exercise, and truly not understand the extent, the thought that goes into it, what is actually occurring. It's not just, it's not just a rebound off the ground or dropping and catching of the weights. It's the ability to call upon certain aspects, certain muscles, neurotransmitters to respond and react and display certain things at a certain time in a particular sequence. And when that sequence may be broken or there may be a discrepancy in it or, we have to immediately stop, right? Because then we're perfecting imperfections and we're programming inefficiencies and defects, right? So there's so many little intricacies and details that are overlooked and then place even greater relevance and importance behind that foundation and phase one or phase A, because the more proficient and efficient and effective and more you've mastered the initial phase, the more information and data you can receive from the next phase, right? From those exercises, you're able to receive more programming, more impact from them. You're able to perform at higher load, higher volume, high velocity. I mean, this young man squats, over 700 pounds. He bench presses, over 500 pounds, and we don't lift heavy, right? Now we're subjected to incredibly high, loads, right? And at high velocities and at high volumes, but we're moving those loads at a fraction of a second, right? At such high speeds, because that's what happens in real life. That's what happens on a playing field, right? It's the athlete that's able to create the greatest amount of force in the least amount of time and be able to recover from it and display it over and over and over and over and over and over again when no one else is able to and when everyone else is breaking down. Jay would always use this analogy, and he used it on your podcast as well. If we're facing each other, right, and you bench 500 pounds and I bench 150 pounds, but I can get, and we're seeing who can get to whose chest first to create impact. Obviously, if you get to my chest first, you're going to, with, bench pressing 500 pounds, you can create a tremendous amount of damage. But if I can get to your chest first, I win, and I win every time, right? And so if you're able to combine great amounts of force production and the rates of it, and at high volumes, being able to do it over and over and over again without being impacted by it, having that high level of efficiency, you're unstoppable, right?
And that is the end of part 2.